movie nerds, dorks, and weirdos. Welcome to the spoiler review of Weapons, director Zach Creggor's new film. This is New Movie Tuesdays, the spoiler side. It does not typically come out on the same days as the spoiler section because it just takes me so long to edit these things. I'm trying to add pictures now, and I'm trying to make a better product for you guys. I'm new to this podcasting thing. I've been at it for 8 years sporadically because I for the longest time I've always been working. But in the last year, I've really wanted to commit to this podcasting thing because some part of me enjoys it and feels compelled to keep doing it. And again, as I've said in my other podcasts, my goal for this channel is to be a resource for young filmmakers or anybody who's interested in storytelling and filmmaking. I want you to get the filmmaker's perspective on movies. I'm not just talking about the movie as a regular fan, and I know that does come off as a bit pretentious at times. I don't mean to be. I am both just a regular dude, but I'm also someone who's, although I've never been in the film industry, I've made short films, award-winning short films, made documentaries, been on movie sets, been on a couple industry sets, and look, I'm coming at this with the perspective that I just want you guys, whoever watches this, amongst all the things I'll throw at you on this podcast, I do want you to leave with a sense of, okay, this is what storytelling looks like, this is where the filmmaker's coming from, or this is what a filmmaker should be looking for. So that's where I'm coming from in my podcast. But with that being said, let's get into the spoiler review. So if you didn't see the spoiler-free review, that's a total separate video. Check it out on my homepage, the spoiler-free review. Go check out Weapons, then come back and watch this. I do believe Weapons deserves watching without knowing anything going into it. And yeah, with that being said, let's just do this, okay? First off, I'm just going to get into my thoughts on the movie. Spoiler thoughts, favorite moments, all that stuff, all that jazz. I love how this movie's told in chapters, and that the opening chapter, or really the first three chapters, we just don't know what happened to the kids. And it's so well told because it's just, the first one is the teacher. You see her being blamed by everybody. She's becoming, whether she was before or is now, because of the situation, she's clearly falling into alcoholism. Also, she has a not boyfriend, a man who's taken. She has a woman, he's married. And clearly this situation they're having, it's not a very healthy situation for either one of them. But this guy that she's seeing, Paul, who's a police officer, is also an alcoholic and struggling. So, alcoholism is by that definition a theme of this movie, even if not like directly. I'll get into that later. But yeah, I really like the way this story unfolds, where this movie could have not been anything related to evil magic or anything like that. Where there's a witch in this movie, but the way the story's told, for literally almost the first half, really, this could have been some kind of mind virus, some kind of social media brainwashing or something like that. It could have been any one of those things. And I do find it ironic after, a week after making my Eddington review, where I'm trying to defend police from sort of social media brainwashed things where where good officers are pinned as bad officers based on, videos that are falsified, videos that only show you this particular clip and don't tell you anything else. It is ironic that a week after that, I'm now making a movie about a police officer who is actually doing things wrong and misusing his power and finding ways to avoid punishment. So it's like, wow. Well, is it karma, or is it poetic justice, or is it just that everything exists in the world. There's good cops, and then there's shitty cops, and then there's this cop. And I'm like, oh god, why can't they all be RoboCop? Maybe soon they will be. But yeah, I love how it's told in chunks. I love that the way this movie comes out. It's it's literally, it could go any which way. It could have been a serious, legitimate drama about missing children, and who took them, and how they tricked the kids into doing this. And I would have been just as invested because the storytelling's so good from the start. And I'm sure Zach Creggor could have made that movie if he wanted to. And one little tidbit I will say from his interview from the last podcast on the podcast, he talked about how he went into the writing of this movie actually not knowing what happened to the kids. So that's wonderful. I think that it's a great element that leads to, how all the characters, they just feel relatable, and how'd they get here, how'd this happen. Because it just feels like, well, they legit don't know, they have no sense that there's magic coming. And I think if there was any legitimate hint toward that, it would make the story less convincing. So, but even then, like both Justine's story and Archer's story, Josh Brolin, I forgot his name was Archer. Both of them have these nightmares that are super creepy. She walks into her classroom, and the one kid who didn't go missing, Alex, has this Joker makeup. He looks so creepy. And then Josh Brolin sees Gladys, the creepy witch lady from the end of the movie. And both scares. It's the same scare, but it's so it works. And another thing about these dream sequences, I do want to say from the interview, one of Zach's frustrations in movies is when something happens and then the character wakes up and it was a dream. And so he said he hated that, and that's why his approach to these dreams was to let you know they were a dream right away. And I really was like hit by Josh Brolin when he has his dream and he sees his son run out the door, and he's walking out the door himself, and he looks up and there's this tower. No, but in front of the tower, it seems almost like there's an alien there. I think, is this going to be an aliens abduction story? And when he looks up and there's a giant AK-47, like, what is that about? Symbolically, it's a weapon. But I think it's interesting that his name is Archer, right? His name is Archer, and Archer is supposed to be someone who sees far ahead and is a great shot. And he is really the physical hero of the movie. So I think his name and even the visualization of the gun, although it's not like a bow and arrow, but the AK-47, it is a weapon, So that perhaps someone who fires shots or fires arrows would use. So I feel like the AK-47 has something to do with him. I almost forgot that Josh Brolin, when we meet him, well, we first meet him in the teacher, we first meet him in the parent conference, or in the auditorium with all the distressed parents, and he's one of the ones yelling. That's where we first meet him. But when we meet him in his story, I love that he's in a bed that's a Batman bed. And I'm like, because if anyone knows, Josh Brolin was almost selected to be Batman in Batman v Superman, but it went to Ben Affleck instead. And the funny thing is, I still feel like that was the right call for then, but looking at Josh Brolin now, I'm like, man, right now, he's kind of perfect for Dark Knight Returns. So I'm hoping Zack Snyder gets to make Dark Knight Returns, because, we don't need to get into those movies, but man, like as soon as I saw him in the Batman bed, I'm like, God damn it, you were almost Batman. You became Thanos and what's his name from Deadpool instead, Cable. So that's fine. But anyway, I thought it was very interesting, the AK-47 in the dream. Um, damn. Uh, here's good storytelling stuff. When Justine goes to Alex's house and finds it covered up in newspaper, this is good storytelling. When you have something that is so strange and so bizarre, typical storytelling etiquette is that you give people just the tiniest glimpse of it first, and then you slowly show more and more, uh, as the entire story unfolding should make that extreme thing more powerful, or as you get into that weird thing, it just helps the audience acclimate to this strange thing they're about to deal with. So I like that when we see Justine's story, we see her go to Alex's house covered in newspapers. She she walks around. She sees just a little opening in the window, and when she looks in, she sees the parents sitting down in the dark, completely still. It's so creepy, so creepy. So that and then she just leaves because obviously creeped out. No one's answering the door. When we get to the Jason story, the junkie story, which is crazy, Paul, her cop, not boyfriend, who she has a little fun with earlier in the movie, Paul ends up catching this junkie trying to break into a building, definitely to steal something. And, he ends up getting stuck by one of the junkies' needles and punches Jason in the face. But then we get to Jason the junkie's storyline, which is like, I like that. I just like that we got that perspective. Like, ooh, so here's just the guy on the street, and I love that his introduction also very small. We see Justine in the first chapter going to a liquor store, and he just walks up in wide. Hey, and I've heard this before. Hey, I'm just trying to get a get a couple bucks to get on the bus. And I've totally heard that before at the gas station. The same guy bugged me the same day. I was running around doing a whole bunch of stuff. I had to get gas twice that particular day. The same guy, the same day, asked me twice. Doesn't even, whether he realized I was the same person or not, asked me twice, hey, I'm just trying to get a couple bucks for the bus. I was like, oh, no, you're not. I know you're not, because there ain't no bus stop over here. You know what I mean? So you just get out of here. What the hell are you talking about? And so, but that's our introduction to James. Just this side character, practically an extra. Maybe he's just a day player. No, he gets his own little story when we see James's side and he goes into the house and actually interacts with those zombie parents. And this is Alex's parents, the one kid who didn't go missing. So we get the further reveal. Oh, okay, something's going on, but he's the one who stumbles upon all the kids in the basement. And I think it's an interesting through line between Barbarian and Weapons, whether he did it on purpose or not, is that in the basement is something creepy. So kind of Evil Dead inspired as far as I'm concerned. But I love that he just the junkie who's running around trying to steal stuff from people is ironically the one who figures out and solves the case. Well, he doesn't solve the case. We still don't know why they're there, but at least we know where they are. And he sees the $50,000 reward at the pawn shop where he's making money off of everything he stole from the house. But in his first interaction, that's when the parents come at him, and they just slam the door on him. But it's so creepy. When Justine's stalking the house and Alex's mom comes out and she is acting like a puppet and gets in her car, and it just makes me think, man, nobody in this town locks their doors or even the doors of their cars, man. What the hell? But also, I thought, aren't there auto locks on these doors? there's some logic leaps in the movie, but it's a movie. It's like it's not the kind of movie where you really gotta worry about the holes, because we have Josh Brolin's story where based on his own dream and the ring camera footage of his son running away, he he goes to another family's house and with only two houses coordinates and figures out the direction the kids were running into. It's Justine who realizes that they're going toward the house. That's the house of Alex. So, but still, it's like, why didn't the cops do this? They sort of justify it with Gladys's acting very friendly and cleaning up the house and all that. But yeah, but I love the unfolding of the story that we get the little glimpse, and literally in this movie it's a glimpse, which is Justine looking through the window, seeing the parents sitting still, very creepy in the dark, and then a bit more of a reveal with Jason that the parents only moved to chase Jason out of the house, and man, when it ends up being Paul who goes into the house, gets zombified, and he yanks Jason in, that's such a creepy scene. Because again, we just don't know. Yeah, and then the Wong attack. Oh, that was brutal. But I do think it's one of the as terrible as it is, it's also one of the best scenes of the movie because again, a movie should affect you, right? We have the whole setup of Benedict Wong with his lover, his partner, and they're buying groceries, and then it's Saturday and they're having hot dogs. And I can't help it. They're gay people eating hot dogs. And I can't help it, like, wieners in your. Anyway. Um, but then that's what Gladys shows up and wants a bowl of water and all this, and pulls out the stick that has the wrapped up things. She stole something from Wong's office from earlier when she was pretending to be a guardian of Alex. But when Wong is bashing his partner's head in with his own head, and I'm trying to watch and see, like, is Wong, human enough to know that he's doing this? Because it kind of seems like he is, but I can't tell. You know what I mean? And it's just, it was such a brutal kill when you see that head reduced to pulp. It's just like, oh no, this is terrible. It's like, and then his run is when we see him run across the entire town. And it's set up. Gladys shows up and she says, "Oh, I had to walk all the way across town." It's setting up the distance he has to travel when he has to run off to get Justine. Like, oh, you made him run across town, and his eyes are bulging. It's like, this is terrible. If he's conscious, it's awful. But I do feel like these people probably are somewhat conscious, even if they are trapped in the zombie mode. Because when you see with the parents later in Alex's story, and he's feeding them soup, and with what tiny mouth movements they can give, there seems to be like a pure, genuine desperation. But Alex's story really got me. So another thing that Zach Creggor talks about is that, unlike Eddington, which had a real social message, this movie is more of a personal letter or diary entry, as Zach Creggor put it. Is that when we get to Alex's story, Gladys arriving and seeing her looking sickly, but also seeing the parents sort of frozen still and having to feed them cans of soup. That is something that Zach went through as a kid, with his father being an alcoholic and getting very sick. What is the deal here? Okay, we've lost lights, and I've almost electrocuted myself. It's not creepy at all when you're making a video about witches and stuff. But anyway, that turns out that entire story with Gladys and and feeding the parents soup. That's a personal diary entry into his life, and even the starting of the story with the missing kids. It's that Zach Creggor had lost a family member, and he just decided to start writing the story as a way to sort of deal with his grief. So it's just a personal story, but to this end, this is why I want to. This is why I say this is for young filmmakers. Like when it comes to this movie's not trying to be a social message. There was a interview I saw where someone tried to ask Zach Creggor, so what's the deeper meaning of the visuals of the movie? And he was like, well, there's no real deeper meaning here. This is just a sort of a personal story about stuff I went through, and also I wanted to make a fun ride that is full of the stuff I enjoy. And I thought that's such a wonderful answer. And seeing his interview again on the last podcast on the left show or podcast, it's in the name. But watching his interview, he just seems like a normal guy. He admitted to not seeing every movie on Earth, and I'm like, wow, I actually really liked that because it filled me with some comfort. Like, I know, again, I may come off pretentious with this goal of my podcast and my channel, but I too am just a guy. I haven't seen every movie ever made, but I love learning how movies are made and where the filmmakers are coming from. So just to be able to tell you here, if you don't see it in his interviews, young filmmakers, like, this is just a movie. It's not trying to have the goals of Eddington, and it's purely personal. But even Eddington, was Ari Aster basically documenting his experience of the being trapped in COVID and stuck on his phone. So that's personal, right? That's a personal experience that he translated and added other values to it because based on what mattered to him. But that's the same thing's happening here. This is a personal story. You may, I'm sorry, regular audience members who are not interested in this, but to the young filmmakers who might find use and value in this, it's important to point out, like, movies are personal. You look at this movie and there's a personal tale being told under the guise of fiction about the director. He's talking about his own life through the story of Alex and what he went through. And while my father didn't have alcoholism, I had a different situation of craziness at the home. But I had an experience that's adjacent to this experience, which I can say is like the Alex story really affected me. I really felt for that kid. I understood why he was so quiet and couldn't talk about what was going on because I had like an adjacent experience, not the same experience, but enough of a situation where it's like, yeah, like some things you just can't talk about to other people. But that's why that particular section of the story, when we see Alex and Gladys coming over, the destruction of his family, and this really Gladys, it's like Gladys is the personification of the alcoholism in a bizarre kind of way, and that's not something Zach Creggor said, but she is trying to feed off of the parents. That's not enough, and then she needs the kids. And so yeah, it's really, it was not hard to watch, but it made me emotional to watch. I was really invested in his story and surprised because I liked Justine's story. It was something I could totally follow. I wanted to see her get to her conclusion and her resolution, but this really felt like this is the real main character, or this is the real hero of the story. Justine and both Julia Garner's Justine, Josh Brolin as Archer, they're our protagonists leading us through the story to a large extent, but it's really the story of Alex and how he gets his stand against the witch. I love the ending. I love that, when Gladys makes him watch how she does the magic. It was like, this is how you do exposition. The best way to do it is, there has to be some kind of character, power, or relationship situation that reveals that exposition. So when she makes him watch and shows the magic, only to make the parents stab themselves with the forks, I'm like, oh God. It was such a, again, it's like, it's horrible as it is. And then it gets worse because now this is all this horror that was experienced is just to tell him to stay in his place and to do what he's told. And watching the story from his point of view, he seems so just nice and sweet and innocent in Justine's side. But then when you watch the story from his point of view, and he is just so devastated and holding it all in, but he can't present that to the world, and that is something I really relate to when I was younger. The things you have to hide to get through the day, and then when you act weird or distant and far away, and everyone just treats you like you're some weirdo, like something's wrong with you. To grow up with that, that's something I really related to personally. So again, movies are always personal. Whatever lofty additional, like the meanings and all that, yes, I talk about these things in my podcast, but even those meanings come from a personal drive of the filmmaker. I've talked about Star Wars a lot before, but and even in that, George Lucas was interested in anthropology, social studies, all of his studies, including that of Joseph Campbell. His interests went into how the story of Star Wars was told and why it was told the way it was told. So it is whatever the filmmaker has in their heart that matters to them. When it comes to movies like this, that's what is affecting you. You're don't if you're a filmmaker, don't have the attitude of the regular audience member. You're not a regular audience member anymore. You know what I mean? Your job is to see more than that. And so I just want to appreciate that Zach was willing to share that in his interviews. But also, damn, just what an incredible story, But again, the ending. I love that we have on the one side when, Justine and Josh Brolin, fuck it, I know he's Archer, but when Justine and Josh Brolin show up to the house ready for action, and then they get attacked by Paul and James the Junkie, and simultaneously we have Alex being chased by his kids, and it's a 100% shining experience where it is shining over and over again. They're just breaking through doors, breaking through doors, breaking through doors. And even though, yeah, those scenes already exist, the minute the mom, I wish I wrote down her name, the minute the mom busted through the last door and you just see her head, you know what I mean? It took me right back to Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, when Sarah Pauli's husband busts through that door and just his head and arm are kind of stuck. But this was just so much creepier because it was actually way more head-on Evil Dead. You know what I mean? Because she just looked like an Evil Dead villain. I love that shot. It creeped me out just looking at it, but I'm like, this is, if you're going to go this way, you got to go all the way. Again, I love Long Legs for its simplicity, but if you're going to go hard, you got to go all the way, and I love that they did that. And again, it's just the small taste of what's to come. Because on the flip side, you're like, oh, technically, even though she's zombified, she's still a living person who is shoving her head through a piece of wood. It's terrible, terrible thing to go through. But on the flip side, when Alex uses the magic against the witch, and all the kids chase the witch, and again, we have the great building of tension to the ending. I love that the kids are just jumping through windows like nothing matters. It's like, wow, it's like this isn't realistic. But I mean, I don't even care just because I can't believe I'm getting the image. Because the movie starts off with this sweet music. You kind of know it's going to have a happy ending or some kind of successful, positive ending. Because we're seeing all the kids run and the music is actually quite gentle. It's very gentle and kind of sweet. And even the way the kid is talking about it, she doesn't say that it has a sad ending, even though it's kind of somber. She just says this was a freaky story. But yeah, I really dug the kids chasing down the witch exactly like a zombie movie, and they just go through house after house after house, smashing through everything, smashing through windows. It's wonderful. It is great. But then what they do to the witch, I mean, not that I want kids doing these things in real life or necessarily look for this in movies, but the fact that they Day of the Dead pulled her apart just like the guy at the end of Day of the Dead, that got me good. That got me really good because it was so violent. And we already have the building tension of everyone else. We think Josh Brolin's going to kill Julia Garner. We think the parents are going to get to Alex before he can do what he's doing, or before the kids can get to the witch. But first, I love seeing the witch who has been so creepy and wrong and evil, and especially after the Benedict Wong sequence, being made to kill his lover, followed by the parents stabbing themselves. Like those were enough for me to like think, okay, burn the witch, burn this witch. But man, that Day of the Dead is my one of my favorite zombie movies. It's top three. Train to Busan, 28 Days Later, Day of the Dead, George A. Romero's Day of the Dead. If you haven't seen that, if you saw the ending to this movie and you like that, go watch George A. Romero's Day of the Dead. I haven't seen Dawn of the Dead yet. I've seen Night of the Living Dead and I've seen Day of the Dead. I haven't seen Dawn yet, but you gotta, if you love zombies too, you gotta watch Day of the Dead. That is 100% what they're doing. It was The Shining, it's Day of the Dead. I freaking love that. So this movie had everything I needed and like about movies telling stories in a fresh way. I like that we had the different perspectives, very Tarantino style, but also it's in its own voice. It's not trying to copy Pulp Fiction, but it's just its own voice. Movies have told stories in chapters before Tarantino and after Tarantino. Just because Tarantino made it such his distinct style for a while doesn't mean it belongs to him. And you look at Django Unchained, that's a straightforward story told from beginning to end. I do want to do a little cast shout out to Alden Enrich. Enrich. He plays Paul. I was like, who is this guy? I'm pretty sure that's young Han Solo from Solo, a Star Wars story. Now I enjoyed the movie, but I wasn't crazy about it. I really felt like I don't know what this is, but he was wonderful in this movie. I was really amazed at how good he was playing this very complicated character. He's not really a great guy. He's cheating on his wife, and he's an alcoholic who's clearly not following his program, and it seems like perhaps maybe he was into some other stuff, because when he gets stabbed by the junkie's drugs, he does act a little extra freaked out. Like it seemed a little bit more than just I'm a cop and I know what this could be. It seemed like maybe he was a little bit more than an alcoholic, but that's just me reading into it. But another thing I want to point out, just Zach Creggor, his approach to these different storylines was that not only are we seeing a different perspective, but also the way the person sees the other person changes the way the scene happens. So that's something I like about the way the movie's shot, where on Justine's story when she's at the bar and Paul comes in the door. We're following behind Justine to go hug Paul. And she does say it a certain way. And when we see Paul's side of the same scene, and she just seems so sweet. You know what I mean? She seems like the sweetest thing on earth. And I love that. I love that. I felt like things were slightly different, but I couldn't tell. And on the flip side, yeah, that. But it was Alden. Aaron Rick. I'm sorry, I'm screwing up your name, dude. But it was him who revealed that that was the approach to filming the different points of view. That he played things slightly differently based on whose point of view it was. So in his version of meeting James the junkie, he's very serious and he's very worried. You know, he's just so worried. And then when we see James's perspective, he seems really in charge and scary and like a punk. You know what I mean? And honestly, I think, you know, I know the movie's not trying to say anything big. Zach Creggor has already said that. But this is something I want to kind of point out about just, again, my personal reflection on life. It's like a lot of how we deal with problems in our life is how we see life. You know, if you look at how James acts, right? He's a punk, he's a liar, he acts tough, he acts like this and that. And so his perspective of Paul is as this tough guy who's on top of him and in charge of himself. And his version of Paul is sober, right? But he's not seeing Paul for how Paul is. He's just seeing what he sees because he's a junkie and he's whacked out. To me, again, I really like that approach to the filmmaking because in another way, I just think that's just an accurate reflection of life. One of the best videos I saw was, I don't know who the guy was, but I guess he was like a famous boxer or something, and some guy who was much taller than him came up to him and the boxer guy was doing nothing. He was just waiting in line, and the tall guy just comes up to him like, "Oh yeah, you think you can just beat me up? You think you could just do something to me?" And the boxer guy is just like, "Dude, what are you talking about?" You know what I mean? And the boxer guy is just so calm and so cool and not challenging back. Because the guy's like, "I'm just gonna knock you out. I'm just gonna lay you down, man. If you just think you can just do things to me." And the fact that the boxer was just so reserved, he gave the guy nothing to start a fight. You know, and he also wasn't worried. You know, so I just thought, okay, see, you know, that's again slice of life. How you see the world is also how you react to the world. Just interesting things of note. But anyway, back to the movie. Other cast shout out Toby Huss, who plays Locke, the father-in-law to Paul. He is in a wonderful show called Carnival. If you have HBO Max, if you like weapons, but you kind of like the kind of more low-key, subtle horror, building horror, slash supernatural kind of story, I think you might really like Carnival. It's a very slow burn show. It stars Clea Duvall and Nick Stahl, everyone knows from Terminator 2 and Sin City. It's a really great, it's a period show about carnival people, carnies, during the Dust Bowl in the 1920s. And they're riding around trying to make money, going to all these different towns. They happen upon Nick Stahl, who's just lost his mother and has no family. He's got nobody left, and they take him as part of their troupe. And it's a really wonderful show where there's this slow reveal that Nick Stahl might be this kind of Jesus-like character or some kind of just positive angelic force in the real world. It's slowly revealed across season one, while simultaneously there is a preacher, and he, on the flip side, is having some kind of evil come out of him. Something terrible is happening with him, and he's got some kind of wicked magic that's affecting people around him. And it's only 2 seasons long, but it's fantastic. Ronald D. Moore, who wrote Battlestar Galactica, he's one of the main people making that show. Go check out Carnival. And Toby Huss plays a very interesting character. He's kind of he's not the butt of jokes character, but he plays a character who named Stumpy, whose wife and daughters are all prostitutes, and he himself is a bit of a racist hick. You know what I mean? And you kind of see his character go through, changes across the show, small changes, but he was really wonderful in that show. So seeing Toby Huss as is he Commander Locke or Captain Locke, whatever his title may be, but as the father-in-law to Paul was wonderful. And of course, I gotta give a hats off to Carrie Christopher, who plays Alex. Man, his performance is so solid. But yeah, that's just my kind of reaction to the movie. I love how it's shot, that video game style, the perspective. Love the storytelling reveals and the personal nature that Zach Creggor brought to the movie, where this movie's so perfectly well balanced. It's so well balanced that it can have a little comedy with the horror and a nice little drama story in the middle of a horror, but even the drama is part of the horror. It's a really well oiled machine, really well told story, and that's why I gotta respect this movie. So Weapons, great movie, well done. Hats off Zach Creggor, the whole cast and crew. Even if all you did was drop off donuts, you know what I mean? Thank you for your part in making a really fun horror movie, because it was fun as well as scary. So great job everybody on this team. Great job everybody who made this, and I'm very excited. Zach Creggor, I may have already mentioned it, I can't remember at this point, but Zach Creggor is making the next Resident Evil. It makes so much sense to me, because these are zombies. These are magic zombies, they're witch zombies, but they are zombies, especially in this final sequence. Like, again, Alex's mom, her head through the door. These are zombies. You look at Barbarian, it's like she looks like a monster from Resident Evil. You know what I mean? And the experience of it, the fact that both movies, Barbarian and Weapons, are about some scary creature that you have to go downstairs to find, or something like that. Very classic horror movie stuff, and also very Resident Evil. Weapons, what a blast. If for some reason you watched this and didn't watch the movie, please go watch the movie. It's so much fun. It's fun legs, I'm telling you. Fun legs. All right. That's what I got to say. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. And to all you movie nerds, dorks, and weirdos, mahalo and aloha.